My name is Nora Prescott, and the pager went off in the middle of my brother's favorite joke about me. Cole was 3 sentences deep into the gas money bit, the one where I am too broke to fill a tank, too pitiful to own a real vehicle, a 32-year-old woman who still gets dropped off places like a kid. The table was laughing the way it always laughed, warm and easy and at my expense, and my father had just finished saying grace over a Christmas Eve ham without once mentioning my name in it. That was the wound. That is where I want you to start, because it is where every one of these dinners started, and it is the last one that ever went that way. Then the tone cut through the room. 3 rising notes from the pager on my hip, the sound that has pulled me out of 1,000 warm rooms into 1,000 cold nights. I stood up while Cole was still talking. And here is the thing not one person at that table knew. 40 miles north, on a lit concrete pad in the falling snow, a helicopter sat fueled and ready with my name written on the board as pilot in command. And a flight nurse, and a medic sitting in a warm crew room who would not lift one wheel off the ground that night unless I said the weather was safe to fly. They told me I could not afford gas money. They had no idea what was on standby for me. So let me tell you how the daughter nobody would give a ride to become the only person who left that table on Christmas Eve to keep a stranger alive. Back up 2 hours, to the part where I arrived. I drove myself, in the 15-year-old Subaru I refuse to replace because it starts at 30 below and has never once let me down, which in my family is treated as evidence of poverty rather than sense. Cole's truck was in the driveway, an enormous lifted thing with a custom paint job and a plate that said, with no irony at all, SCLFMADE. He had been sending photographs of it to the family group chat for a month. He met me at the door with a beer already in his hand and a grin already loaded. The Subaru made it up the hill, he said. Miracle. You want me to spot you some gas money for the ride home. Wouldn't want you stranded. I am fine, Cole, I said, and I meant it more ways than he could hear. Inside it smelled like pine and ham and my mother's cinnamon. Maureen hugged me hard and long, the way she always does, and my father Walt gave me the nod he gives, the one that has never quite been a welcome. My sister Paige arrived a few minutes later in a cloud of good perfume with her new boyfriend, an orthopedic surgeon named Elliot Shaw, who mentioned within his first 4 sentences that his car was German and expensive. My family loves a person who arrives expensive. They have spent my whole life measuring worth by what a thing looks like from the driveway. For 9 years, they have measured me and found me wanting. When people asked what I did, my family said, with a little apologetic smile, "Oh, Nora does something with aviation, some transportation thing. We do not really understand it." They thought I booked flights for rich people. When I tried, once early on, to explain what I actually flew, Cole changed the subject to his landscaping accounts before I finished the second sentence, and I learned to stop trying. It is a strange thing to let people keep a small idea of you because the small idea is easier to carry than the truth. I told myself it was privacy. Most of it was armor. If they thought I was less than them, they never looked closely, and if they never looked closely, they could never be disappointed by the real thing. I let the caricature stand for 9 years, and I want to be honest that I helped build it. The job I actually do, I learned from a man named Ridgway, a gray old pilot with 100 lifetimes in his hands who trained me when I was 23 and terrified. Ridgway taught me the one rule that has kept me alive through every dark and every storm. He would tap the panel and say it slow so it would stick. In the dark, in the cloud, your body will lie to you. Your own ears will swear you are straight and level while you are rolling into the ground. The feeling is a liar. Read the instruments. When it all goes to pieces, you stop trusting the feeling, and you read the instruments, and you fly what they tell you, not what your gut screams. Read the instruments. I have flown my whole career on those 3 words. I had just never thought to fly the rest of my life by them. Dinner was called. The table looked like a magazine, china, and candles, and my father went around asking each of us for the year's proudest accomplishment. Cole had grown his company 40%, added trucks, landed a big commercial contract, and the table applauded. Self-made, my father said, that is my boy. Paige had a promotion and a surgeon. Elliot had published papers and bought the German car. My mother had run the church fundraiser. And then my father's eyes came to me, and the table went quiet in the particular way it always did, braced for something a little embarrassing, and he said, "And you, Nora, anything to share?" "I had a good year," I said, doing what Cole said, booking flights. "I coordinate air operations," I said. "For rich people," Paige said gently, "the way you talk to someone fragile." "Something like that," I said, because the pager on my hip was already my whole answer, and they could not hear it yet. Cole leaned back with his hands behind his head. 9 years, he said to Elliot, like I was a case study. 9 years at her transportation thing, and she still drives a beater and gets gas money jokes. I built a real company in half that. Some people talk about work. Some people do it. He looked at me, delighted with himself. You cannot even afford to fill a tank, nor, be honest. I set my fork down. I did not raise my voice. I have learned that the calm voice carries farther than the loud one. "Cole," I said, "tell me, how much does it cost to fill that truck?" He blinked. 120 maybe. "And you fill it weekly," I said. "So 500 a month in fuel, another 200 insurance, the payment, maintenance. Call it 1,800 a month to move your truck around this valley." "So," he said. "So," I said, and here is where the pager saved me from saying the rest, because the 3 notes went off, and I was already standing. My phone was in my hand before the tone finished. The room stared. I turned half away, the way you learn to, and I answered in the voice that is not my family voice, the flat, clear one. "North Star 6, Prescott, go ahead." And the dispatcher's words came fast and cold. "Rollover on the pass, single vehicle, ice, 1 critical, a teenage girl, suspected internal bleeding, ground transport time over the pass in this storm running close to 90 minutes. The receiving trauma center wants her by air. Weather at the pad, marginal, ceiling low, snow, pilot's discretion." Pilot's discretion. That is the phrase that lands the whole thing on you. Not the medic, not the nurse, not the doctor waiting at the other end. The pilot decides whether the sky is safe enough to gamble 3 crew and 1 patient, and the pilot decides alone. I walked out of the dining room into the cold of the front porch with my father half risen and my brother's mouth still open, and I pulled up the weather on my phone and I read it. Not how it felt, how it read. Ceilings, temperature, dew point, the winds aloft, the freezing level, the route through the high country I have flown 400 times in the dark. Behind me, through the door I had not fully closed, I heard Elliot Shaw say very slowly to no one, "Wait. North Star 6. He had gone strange and pale. "Wait," he said, "Captain Prescott." He looked at my sister. "That is the life flight bird. That is the pilot who brings me my worst nights." He said it the way you say the name of someone you have heard about but never met. The ER calls her the steadiest stick in the state. He looked at the door I was standing behind. "That is your sister." I did not hear the rest, because I was already reading the instruments of the sky, and they told me it was flyable, hard but flyable, a real go and not a foolish one. I stepped back inside for exactly 10 seconds. My family was frozen in a way I had never once seen at that table. I said, "I have to go fly. There is a girl on the pass who does not have 90 minutes. I will come back for my coat another day." Cole said, "You are actually and could not finish it." "I am the pilot," I said. "That is what the transportation thing is. Merry Christmas." I drove the Subaru north through the snow faster than I should have. And I want you to know I did not think about my brother's face once on that drive, because you cannot carry a grudge into an aircraft. It takes up the space you need for the weather. I got to the pad and the machine was fueled and lit exactly as I had known it would be. My fleet, my whole entire fleet. 1 aging medical helicopter and 2 people I would trust with my life. On standby all night the way it is every night, waiting on my one word. I gave the word. We lifted into a sky that wanted to lie to me the whole way. Twice the snow closed in, and my inner ear swore we were banking when we were level. And twice I did the only thing that has ever saved anyone. I stopped believing the feeling, and I read the instruments, and I flew what they said. We found the flashing lights on the pass. We loaded a girl the age my niece will be too soon, gray and going grayer, and we flew her over the mountain in 11 minutes that would have been 90 by road. And I set her down on the hospital pad soft as I know how, and a trauma team ran her through the doors. And one of the surgeons who met that stretcher, I found out later, was Elliot Shaw, who had left my family's Christmas dinner and driven straight to the hospital because he could not sit at a table any more knowing what was flying over his head. The girl lived. I will start there because it is the only part of that night that actually matters, and it is the part my family has the hardest time keeping in focus. She lived. I did not go back to the house that night or the next day. I slept the dead sleep you sleep after a hard launch, and when I woke there were the messages, 17 of them, and I want to tell you plainly what I did and did not do with them. Because I know the version of this story where I come back in triumph and buy everyone a jet and wire my brother $10,000 and we all cry on an airplane. That is not what happened, and I would not respect myself if it had. My father's message said he was proud of me and should have said it years ago. My brothers said he did not deserve my forgiveness. My sisters said she had been awful. Words are easy. Words cost less than gas money. When I finally saw them, at my mother's kitchen table with no ham and no candles and no audience, I did not let them do the thing they wanted to do, which was to fold the whole night into a story where they had always known, always believed, always been proud. Walt started down that road. We always knew you were doing something important, and I stopped him gently and I stopped him all the way. No, I said. You did not know because you never once asked. For 9 years, you had a daughter who flies people out of the worst moments of their lives, and you told your friends she does a transportation thing, and you skipped her name in the Christmas grace. I am not saying that to punish you. I am saying it because I will not build the next 9 years on a lie about the last 9, and I have spent my whole career learning that you do not get to fly by the story you wish were true. You read the instruments. You read what is actually there. I told them the truth about myself, the real truth, which is not a fortune. I am not rich. I will never be rich. I drive the Subaru because it starts at 30 below, and I would rather spend my money on flight time and on the little girl down the road who wants to learn to fly than on a truck with a plate that brags. There is no secret empire. I did not buy this family a house or pay off a card or fund anyone's business in the dark. And if you have heard 100 stories where the quiet one turns out to have secretly been paying everyone's bills all along, I am here to tell you real life does not work like a fairy godmother with your account number. What I have is not money. It is a skill and a nerve and a crew and a job that matters, and I let you all believe it was nothing because being underestimated was easier than being seen and dismissed anyway. That part is on me. I hid in your small idea of me. I am done hiding in it. I set a boundary, and I set it without heat. I will come to dinners where I am a person and not a punchline. I will not come to be the joke that makes the ham go down easier. If Cole needs someone at the table to feel above, he can find another chair. My brother did not argue. That surprised me. He came, a week later, out to the base in the SCLFMADE truck, and he stood at the fence in the cold and watched the aircraft come and go, and he did not say much, which for Cole is a kind of prayer. He asked me, quietly, how do you decide when it is too dangerous to go? And I told him what Ridgway told me. You stopped trusting the feeling. You read the instruments. He nodded like a man who was hearing, for the first time in his life, that the feeling in his gut about who was worth what might have been a liar all along. It was not forgiveness, and it was not fireworks. It was a door opening the width of a hand. In my experience, that is what real change looks like when it starts. Not a jet in the backyard. A quiet man at a fence, learning to read the instruments instead of the feeling. The warmth I have, I give where it is earned. To my mother, Maureen, who it turned out had suspected for years, who had once found my flight suit in the wash and my captain's certificate in a drawer, and had said nothing because she thought I wanted it private. And who cried at her kitchen table not because I was important, but because she was sorry she had let the others make me small. And to my niece Bertie, Cole's daughter, who is 8 and who has always looked up when a helicopter goes over. I brought her to the base. I sat her in the cockpit and let her hold the controls that were not connected to anything, and I showed her the instruments, and I told her what each one is for. I told her the most important thing I know, the thing I wish someone had told me before I spent 9 years letting people fly my worth by the seat of their pants. Someday, Bertie, I said, the world is going to feel very sure about who you are and what you are worth, and the feeling is going to be so strong you will want to believe it. Do not. The feeling lies in the dark. You read the instruments. You read what is actually there. They told me I could not afford gas money. All night, while they laughed, a fueled aircraft and a crew I would die for sat on a pad waiting on one word from me, and a stranger's daughter is alive this Christmas because I gave it. So if there is a quiet one in your family, the one who does the thing nobody quite understands, the one you have measured by the car in the driveway and found lacking, I am asking you to do one thing before another year goes by. Stop reading the feeling. Ask the real question. Read the instruments. You may find that the person you have been giving rides to has been carrying the whole valley home in the dark.